What is a quote that you love to live by? For me, it was a quote stated by none other than one of the greatest minds of our generation, Michael Santana, who once said, yeah, 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 yeah. I love drooling on myself. I love drooling on myself. I love it. Duh, duh. Me use W key, me smash. This has absolutely nothing to do with today's video. Here we are inside of actually my VOD, and this was taken straight out of my own stream, but obviously the actual gameplay commentary that was occurring during the stream isn't always as in-depth as me being able to go over the VOD in my own time and my own leisure and just talk about things and explain things that I may have missed while playing it myself, because there's actually a lot of micro issues that I've noticed when I was playing this. But I mean, that's just part of the game, right? We VOD review ourselves, we slowly improve. Now in today's video though, we are going to be entering a very interesting board, and that is Piltover Reroll. Now you might be going like, Piltover Reroll, Kai, like aren't you supposed to lose streak with Piltover? Like how are you supposed to play Piltover and reroll these units and then try to win out? That doesn't make any sense. Well, it turns out that T-Hex, as of today is June 5th. This is before the micro patch that they're doing today, but they are doing a large patch tomorrow, so maybe things will change. But at the time of recording, T-Hex is actually a very strong unit that you can keep on your board. Even as you lose streak at the early game and you just have, a decent amount of charges, it can actually provide a lot of damage and provide a lot of work for your board. And because this board actually relies on 3-star Cho'Gath and 3-star Malzahar for a main damage and main tank throughout the early to mid game, we're not actually re-rolling most of the Piltover units, but we are keeping Piltover on our board. As you can tell, our legend is Lee Sin, and we are given Trade Sector, Double Trouble, Jewel Lotus. Now, our board and our start is actually crazy good for this Piltover reroll start. Again, the board is 3-star Malzahar, 3-star Cho'Gath, and then we push tempo, and then we try to go for a fast 9. You might think that that's not really great, but again, we are going to be lose streaking the early game, so we're actually charging up the T-Hex, and then once we just naturally find a win because of our 3-star units, and we happen to be a little bit above the tempo of the lobby compared to everybody else, we should be able to see a lot of charges for our T-Hex, which will then spike our board, stabilize us again, and it's really interesting how this works because the T-Hex will basically spike in power again, we stabilize, and it keeps doing this, keep losing, spike, and then we're chilling, spike, chilling, spike. It spikes our board for us. It's very easy. So here we're going to be taking Trade Sector, and we're going to be playing around this Piltover reroll. Now, again, the idea wasn't that we were going to play Piltover right off rip and play Piltover reroll. This is not a comp that you can hard force because it does require you to hit the Echo from 2-1. But we were trying out different reroll comps. I don't personally like Lee Sin as a legend very much at the time of me recording this, not me playing. But again, we were testing different reroll comps, so Lee Sin just happened to be a legend, and things just worked out in our favor. I'm sure there are other augments as well, like the Golden Ticket, as well as Silver Ticket, a bunch of other reroll boards. Maybe even Think Fast might actually be okay. Obviously, you can't get it at 2-1, but 3-2, it actually might be fine to get the Malzahar 3 and the Cho'Gath 3 online. But nonetheless, we are trying to lose streak here, so it's not like we're trying to find tempo early by any means. We are trying to look for those really good losses with, again, 3 Piltover and eventually tech in the Cho'Gath and then just chill. So, as you can see, we also don't have anything slammed as well because we are trying to keep this lose streak alive. And I am holding Kales here, but the reality is that I don't plan on playing these ever. The thing is that if I hit a Kale 3 very quickly, I may want to change my game plan. But because we are so already invested into Piltover here and we already have the Cho'Gath 2, there's no real reason to sell to play the Kales here. It is always good practice though to hold onto units that are of the same cost, because by doing so, you actually very slightly increase the odds of you finding the X cost unit that you're looking for. So because again, we're looking for the Cho'Gaths and the Malzahars, holding onto the Kales on our bench is actually technically better practice, even though it's such a slight micro optimization that's not actually like really great, but like it's still technically nice. Like the most optimal play here would be to hold the Tristana and the Viego, which you see that I end up doing, but again, it's such a minute micro optimization, it doesn't really matter too much. In terms of itemization, we are looking for our Malzahar items first, but we also know that we are going to slam the gargoyles eventually, so we are trying to play around this Crick Love. So I did pick up a Rod here, but Malzahar actually has a very interesting ability where he actually destroys 35% of shields whenever he casts. So actually, Guard Breaker is probably the better option here, and I should have actually picked up a belt off the carousel, because Malzahar will not only break the shields, but then do extra damage because he's hitting a shield. So Guard Breaker is definitely one of the best items for Malzahar. I do believe he is a blue buff holder, unlike a Shojin holder, because his mana cost is below, I believe the threshold is 70 or 80 mana. At that point, I believe below 70 or 80, you would prefer a blue buff, and then above that, it is Shojin. But nonetheless, we don't have any tiers to work around with, so trying to kill the glove off rip is really, really great. Again, not slamming items here. We do want to ensure a 5 loss. From my experience, whenever you are playing Piltover, greeting the 5 loss during stage 2 is very worth it. And then from there, if you win, you win. And if you don't, you just keep stacking up your prime, and that's totally okay. Or not the prime, the T-Hex. My apologies. And the thing is that I think the 5 loss at stage 2 is worth it, but, you do want to try to mitigate the losses as well. But once you get the 5 loss, you actually garner a decent amount of charges for your T-Hex, and at that point, if you decide to cash out, you cash out, like you just win naturally. Then you can decide, okay, maybe I want to sell the T-Hex here, pivot into something else, or I can try to find some sort of a board that I can play around with Piltovers, with T-Hex, yada, yada, yada. So here, as we can see, we are already on 6 Malzahars here, and we're actually hitting a lot of the majority of our units here, which is pretty nice. Our T-Hex is also at 12. Is it charges? The blue one, 12. We have 12 charges stored up, if you will. But none of those charges, again, in case you don't know how T-Hex works, you have to win a round to convert those charges into the power, into the loot that the T-Hex can actually provide and use. So also what I've noticed as well is that a lot of people just kind of don't want to sell the T-Hex in general. It actually is bugged at the time of recording this, where if you sell it on a loss, you just won't get the loot. But they also have not updated the loot tables, or they haven't exactly told us what you can expect out of T-Hex yet. Usually near the beginning of the set, before the set goes live, a chart is dropped, like a table, like a graph, if you will, that tells you everything that T-Hex could give you based off X amount of gold. And I'm assuming it's probably going to work off thresholds. So if you have like a 20 gold loot waiting in T-Hex, you can probably cash out potentially these items. And then at 40, it's like these items, 60, these items, yada, yada, yada. That's how I would assume it would work out. Anyways, here we are. We are at 3-2. We are given Training Reward, Sleight of Hand, and Shimmering Inventors. Shimmering Inventors is really interesting. Yes, we aren't really 3-starring any of our Piltover units, but we still garner a lot of value out of getting just 50% attack speed. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 50%. Sorry, 25% attack speed, huh? 5% attack speed for every 10 gold you have. So 25% attack speed by staying above 50% gold, or 50%, yeah, 50% gold. 50 gold. 25% attack speed at 50 gold. Jesus. And then we also have a chance to get dropped a little bit of extra gold, like a little bit of trickle-down economy, if you will. I've played this comp, I think, 2 to 3 times at this point. I've gotten Shimmering Inventors 2 out of 3 of those times. Shimmering Inventors feels really, really good. It also helps you tempo throughout the mid-game. So I actually really enjoy Shimmering Inventors. But there are a couple options that could have been better here as well. Just tons of stats, which is another gold augment, is really great as well. Any sort of healing, any sort of, I believe, harm assist is really, really strong as well. All of these are really great. None of these options here are that great. Capricious Forge is okay, but we already have the gargoyles on our Cho'Gath, and we already have our items that we know that we want to slam onto our Malzahar. So here, you might think that we want to actually slam Archangels, but the reality is that we actually want to slam Hodge here. Reason being is that if we were to slam Archangels, we'd be stuck with a bow and a crit glove, both components being very difficult to kill. So having an open bow is very easy to kill because we can just do Zizura or a GS, and then maybe even a Shiv if we want the MR shred. So we have a couple of options there, and an open rod, obviously very easy to kill because we are playing around an AP carry throughout the mid game. So again, it's very, very simple. The game plan is just we slow roll at level 5, and we just try to hit our 3-starred 1 cost. You may have also noticed that at 3-1, a lot of people will actually roll down to about 30 before they econ back up and then start rolling again. I actually chose not to do that for a couple of reasons. The first one being that I was thinking of potentially also 3-starring the Oriana. So 3 different 1-cost 3-stars is a lot to ask for. So because I knew that was so much, and typically rolling down to 30 means that you're trying to hopefully 3-star one of your 1-costs by 3-1. It's a bit of a high roll option, and most of the time, it's like, hey, I have so many of these copies that it would make a lot of sense for me to roll down for it. But again, because I was so far away from Cho'Gath, and I knew I'd be rolling at level 5 for this Cho'Gath anyways, I figured it's probably just better for me to just save my econ, and then I'll just roll on level 5. Plus with Trade Sector, I should be able to hit with little to no problems. So again, slow rolling on 5, trying to find our units. We find the Cho'Gath 2. We are really close to Malzahar 3. Selling everything that we can. Actually hitting the Malzahar 3 at 3-5, which is pretty high roll, actually, in my opinion. And our streak is basically, we're chilling. We're on a 2-win streak here, and yes, we are playing T-Hex. It's not as efficient, but I mean, hey, like if you get a win streak anyways, you might as well just take it, right? So here we're just gonna win streak all the way throughout stage 3. I'm actually gonna speed this up because I mean, it's the same game plan. Slow roll on 5, try to hit our units, try to hit the Cho'Gath 3, yada yada yada. If we don't hit it by 4-1, we send it down on 4-1 to try to hit the Cho'Gath 3, and then we'll start to push levels. As you can see, I am holding a couple of the Orianas. I am also holding the Vi's and the Echoes as well. You don't have to, but to be fair, I was a little concerned about whether or not like I needed to 3-star these units or not. Also, Vi odds are still pretty high at level 5, so it's very possible I could also hit the Vi 3 if I just hold on to the Vi's. The Echo is quite greedy though, I will say. We do hit the Cho'Gath 3 here though, and I'm thinking, okay, I might as well just push level here because I'm so far away from Oriana 3. Oriana 3 is a great utility unit. It not only shields the lowest health ally, but it also, if the shield around it bursts, it will provide an AoE chill or an AoE attack speed slow, which is really, really nice to have. So even though it is nice to have though, it's not necessary to 3-star it. The benefits don't outweigh the cost. Right? At this point, I think we'd rather just level push 6 and then see where we want to go with this board. This was actually the first time of me playing this board ever, so I was a little confused as to what to do about it, but nonetheless, I think we figured it out pretty quickly. Here we get Money, Cybernetic Leech, and Portable Forge. We have enough money that we don't actually need to have any more money. We're chilling. We got a little bit of that trickle down economy value from Piltover, from Shimmering Inventors, as well as Trade Sector, because we get the free reroll every single time. So we really don't need any more money in the spot. Cybernetic Leech is okay. We actually have mostly itemized our Cho'Gath and our Malzahar, I believe, only. So taking this either would not make any sense because we just don't have many components to spread around. Vampiric Blades doesn't make any sense for us either because we aren't playing around our rogues. We do have it active right now because of the Katarina, but that's only because we're only placeholding her right now because we pushed 6 and we didn't roll our shop once for any upgrade of any kind. So here we're going to probably roll again through the Portable Forge. You might be wondering why not Portable Forge. Well, we can't really utilize any AD items, and if we hit any AD items or AP items, I think we'd be in a pretty bad spot because I think our Malzahar is fully itemized at this point. So medium end shopping is sort of like the call here, but we can still roll on Cybernetic Leech here, and that's fine as well. But nonetheless, I think at this point I am thinking about potentially selling the T-Hex. So I was like, okay, maybe if I sell it, then I'll play around like the itemizations as well. Wasn't really sure. But at this point, as you can tell, we're running out of time. I ended up just taking Cybernetic Hulk. It's not the best option here. Definitely not, and I could have rerolled, but I was a little concerned about high-end shopping, about whether or not I could actually hit some units I would actually want. So, and again, at this point, I think I was unsure as to whether or not I wanted to keep rolling at 6 for the Vi 3 and the Echo 3, or if I wanted to keep pushing levels. But I think pretty quickly I realized that I probably should have wanted to push levels, and taking Cybernetic Hulk here was definitely incorrect. Again, you could argue that maybe I'm trying to cash out the T-Hex at this point, and maybe I can play around the components that it provides, but it is a bit of a risky strategy. So during the mid-game, like I said before, or actually I don't remember if I said it before at the beginning, but we are trying to play around 4 Sork throughout our mid-game. We do hit the 3 Void here, which is just, it's nice to have, but ideally we just hit the Vel'Koz instead of this Cassidon, and we have 4 Sork, 3 Void, and we can tempo with basically 2 summons on our board. Which, you know, you can argue that the Voidling is not that great, but it does provide a knock-up at the very beginning of the fight. So you're actually able to position the Voidling in front of the enemy carries, or rather, in front of the enemy carry tanks, so any strong tanks, and you can delay their casts by a second and a half, which is really, really nice to have and can actually be the determining factor in a lot of fights. So, as you can see here, the Voidling is in the back. It's in the 3rd hex here. This is incorrect. It should definitely be in the front, and I believe I do move it eventually. If I don't, I'm trolling. But we're going to speed it up a little bit here. As we can see, we hit the Vel'Koz as well, which is really, really great. But yeah, and as you can see, we position our Voidling right in front of the Sejuani here, and it's able to pop it up so the cast is delayed a little bit. If we were any better at the game, we actually would have thrown it in front of either the Maokai or the Poppy, but nonetheless, we still are able to garner a lot of value out of it. We do start losing here a little bit though. The lobby is a little high roll. As you can see here, this is actually one of my mods, Andy Yeet, but he actually hits the Tristana level 4, so he's actually able to streak throughout the stage 4 a lot easier than I can. So unfortunately, we do lose a little bit here, but again, losing is not bad. T-Hex is actually really interesting where, again, if we lose, it's okay, because we'll just garner extra charges. Our T-Hex will just start getting exponentially stronger. Here, as you can see, this guy actually is level 8 at 4-6, has a Kisante 2, Jarvan 2, Diamond Hands, Azir 2. Like I said before, this lobby is actually pretty high roll, and as you can tell, like, our board is not nearly as strong enough to compete with this, but it should be okay still. Again, 4-6 is really, really crazy to be hitting that kind of a board, but nonetheless, you know, we'll do our best, and we'll be able to scale out eventually with T-Hex. So, you might be wondering where this orb came from. We're actually playing on, I believe it's in Targon. I forget the name of the actual thing it's called, here you go. It's called Targon Prime is the realm, where at 40 HP, you are given a Targonian blessing from the Targonian god, supposedly. And this blessing changes per game. I don't know all of the iterations. I hope somebody brings out a chart about the Targon Prime eventually. But from my experience, the Targon Prime can either be a spat plus 2 components and 10 gold, which that's what it was for this game, or it can be a tome and 20-ish gold. I say ish because I don't remember the exact count. I didn't record that game, so I couldn't go back in the VOD to review it. But in this game in particular, it was a spat and 2 components, 10 gold. Again, this Targonian blessing can change, but everybody gets the same blessing in the same game. So hopefully at a certain point, we'll be able to find out whether or not like the gold is guaranteed or not. That's actually a really important thing to note. Also, like what are the odds we hit a tome in Targonian odds, right? In the Targonian God's blessing realm or whatever, you know? These are things that they're still trying to balance out in the PvE servers. So hopefully by the time the live goes out, we'll have all these tables for all these different things, and we'll be able to understand things a little bit better at the spot. Here, as you can see, I'm starting to spread my components around. I should slam the spat onto the Oriana here. But we spread our components around. By doing so, we are spreading our cybernetic value. And this is something that you can do in general if you realize that, hey, my components, they're not very good. In fact, they're kind of shit. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread the components all around. That way, everybody gets cyber value. And that's the best way I can derive value out of everything that I have, rather than trying to slam some, you know, pretty suboptimal items. You could argue maybe a Rabadon's or a Locket could have been better in this scenario, but like, especially because we have the Senna on bench, and we could maybe switch out the Oriana for Gunners with Jace. But I think somebody did mention that in my chat, and I was like, oh yeah, that probably would have been correct. But at this point, it was like, I already slammed the components around. It's too late. So, unfortunate, but is what it is. Here, eventually slammed the spat onto Oriana, which is great. And again, if we win, great. And if we lose, that's fine too. We don't mind. We are sort of streaking. We're sort of mixed streaking at this point in the game, but that's okay. We're 57 gold, level 8. And we can probably just push level 9 pretty soon. We don't have anything in particular that we're looking for. But again, this board does cap out with legendaries. You could make the argument that it would have been better to take, like, maybe I should have taken the medium end shopping, and then I could have just rolled on 8 and find all my legendaries and tech it in then. That's okay too. But typically this board does cap out with Heimerdinger, with the Piltover Technogenius. Technogenius being one of the best. I think Technogenius is probably one of the best 5-cost traits in my opinion. It just gives you so much value out of the turret. You can get stuff like burn. So if you're lacking a Sunfire or a Morello on your board, you can get some burn on your board. You can get Goldinator if you're lacking on the gold. Goldinator actually provides an execute as well, which is nice. It's a 10% execute, which is great. It also provides I believe Shrink Ray, which is a armor shred, and MR shred, which is great as well. And self repair is okay. I don't think anybody has found a way to make self repair work in any sort of sense that makes sense. But here, as you can see, I do pick up Goldinator and I do pick up Mechano Swarm. Mechano Swarm is the burn, the wound one. If I were to replay this game, I have a Sunfire already on my Kasante, so I probably would not have taken Mechano Swarm, and I actually would have rolled for a different upgrade instead. That is definitely a mistake on my end, but again, this was sort of very early on in the PvE, and I think I only touched Heimerdinger a few times, so I didn't really know what to expect out of this. But the ideal augments for the timer turret in this scenario probably would have been I think just triple, triple Shrink Ray. So I think it's 70% armor shred and MR shred, which would have been a lot better than having the double Mechano Swarm, which I'm not even using because, again, I have Sunfire on my Kasante. It's actually pretty redundant here. So, as you can see, though, we are pushing levels here. We are pumping levels, and we're going to go 9 here, push 9 with the trade sector. We get a free reroll, and we're going to try to cap out our board. Here, we're looking for things that we can tech in. We're looking for the Invoker, potentially, with Shen and Bastion. So we have that with the Taric. We can probably play this over... I guess we tech out the Taric here. And we're playing, like, 3 Void. And this isn't a great board, but it's good enough that, like, we'll stop the bleeding a little bit. Ideally, if we were better and we knew more about the set, we would have done a full transition here. But, I mean... Like, can you blame me, man? The set's new. Like, come on. Like, I'm doing my best over here, all right? Anyways, we are trying to cap out here. What are we capping out around with? I don't know, to be honest. T-Hex actually does, again, like I said before, does a crazy amount of damage. So T-Hex is actually one of those units that, like, once you get it to 4 stars and has a lot of charges into it, it's 34 charges right now. It's not a lot of charges, but it's sizable. It's sizable nonetheless. And at this point, you can see the damage charts on the right side. But it does so much damage. And it actually, like, bursts a lot of carries. So, I don't know if they're going to change this. I wouldn't be surprised if they changed the T-Hex. But as you can see, it's doing the most damage on my board. It did 5.5k damage. Which, if that doesn't mean anything to you, typically a 10k damage unit is a very viable carry even into the late game. Typically, your carry by the end of the game, you want them to be doing roughly about at least 10k damage. So, 5k damage, it's basically half a carry. And with, you know... the Malzahar 3 on my board, the Rise on my board, and the Technogenius 2, the Heimer 2. does a lot of damage, and it's sort of like a group effort that's able to just push out wins and churn out dubs, even if my board seems a bit janky here. So, oh, and also one last thing, the Targon Rise is probably one of the best rises. The only way it's any worse is if you're playing, or any other better ones rather, is the Failure one in the Failure realm, where Rise will just provide an AoE chill, and then that's really, really good with Deadeye. But nonetheless, Targon Rise is one of the best rises, which is why I was trying to cap out with Rise. Anyways, that's the video. Hopefully that helped. Please try out this comp. Piltover Reroll. Really, really strong. Really, really fun. Hopefully it doesn't get nerfed, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does. Yeah, that's about it. Take care, guys. Happy climbing.